Mama Juana. You know what Mama Juana is? No. Not marijuana.
I know what that is.
And the last thing we should touch on.
You just took 100,000 therapists out of business.
That is the scary part. They're dealing with it, which they can't even write emails.
That's exactly the point that I want to make. They're dealing with something. All right, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Too Many Topics podcast. Today we have a good friend of mine, a real good friend of mine. I almost call you a mentor, to be very honest. You know, you've helped me out a lot in the last few years with, different business decisions. But my guest today is David Borish, content creator, AI enthusiast, brand creator. I can go on and on and on and on with the list of things that you have accomplished. We'll talk about some stuff now. But how you been, man?
Great, yeah. Just feeling good back in New York last couple of months.
Oh, I know. I'm glad you're back.
Yeah. I've been in La La Land for 4 years, so it's
How's
good.
That transition from LA to New York?
Well, I think it was time. Took the family out to LA 4 years ago, and it was kind of just really a adventure more than anything. Gave the kids a little bit of a different experience than I had growing up in the city here.
Absolutely.
So, but I think it was all good. It was all, positive. So, but glad to be back.
Yeah, I'm sure that the kids are glad to be back with.
They are.
You probably didn't have much family out there, right?
That was the reason. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. The main reason coming back was family. It's, nothing was holding us there. And what was bringing us back was really, being around family and giving them those years, that we had with cousins and
absolutely.
Everything else. So.
Yeah, that's super important. I'm glad that you're closer to me. Traveling out 3,000 miles or whatever to get to you is fun, but
Yeah, well, I feel the same way coming to Staten Island. So
yeah. Minus the $17.
Yeah, well, I was trying to figure out if the $17 was to keep people out of Staten Island or to keep people from leaving.
It's probably a little of both, right?
Probably, yeah. But that was a shock. Yeah, I'd never seen those kind of numbers before.
Right. Right. Last time you were here, it was probably a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when it was probably like $4 when we were kids. Now it's like cost you a dinner to go to Brooklyn. Well, Staten Island, we must have paid for the bridge. Like I said, for some reason we have this this discount that everyone other borough can't stand that has to come through here. So now you're back in New York. What's going on?
First of all, the summer's been busy. Just been working a lot. Have a couple of projects. Last few years, probably the last 4 years, my energy project PLSAR has been kind of a main focus, but over like the last 6 to 8 months, I've been working on some side projects, which have been keeping me busy. So I was working with photographer Johnny Nunez for about...
Johnny got all the pics.
Johnny Nunez got all the pictures, as Nas would say in his song 27 Summers. So yeah, Johnny, 50 years of hip hop was coming up this year, and I've known Johnny for several years. He's introduced me to a couple of key people over the years who become partners and that. And we had a friendship, and it was just like a conversation led one thing to another, and it was, 50 years of hip hop this year was actually last week,
a couple days ago.
But last year, the question I had for him was like, what are you doing? And you have like one of the biggest archives in hip hop history. He started out with Dame Dash and Jay-Z early, in their careers, and, has captured over 400,000 images, over that time period for, every artist that came through New York. If you were at the party, he was there, it's like till this day. He's one of those guys. So we worked on a few projects. One of them was to get him into Sotheby's, and we were successful with that. So he has always been like an editorial photographer, meaning his stuff's on Getty. And so, like, for example, if somebody makes the news for whether a death or whatever in hip hop, they usually go to Getty, and his images will be used most of the time. But he never went into like selling his photography through galleries, museums, and things. So that was the first thing, and we successfully got him into Sotheby's.
I always wondered why people sometimes don't maximize their capacity.
It's time. I think it's just time, like knowing him and working with him. It's like his hustle's photography. You know, it's like in real estate, if your
Right.
hustle's real estate, you know, it's
Right.
hard to do anything else.
Yeah.
So it's really that.
Absolutely.
We one of the images sold. It was a Nas 40th birthday pictures image that he shot. And it was, I think, over 3,000. So not bad for your first public picture that you took sold. And then we launched, or it's actually launching this week, but it's been working on for several months, which is a lemonade. So Johnny Nunez 50th anniversary edition lemonade. And what was interesting was he came to me with this idea. He said, "Mama Juana, you know what Mama Juana is?
No.
Not marijuana.
I know what that is.
Mama Juana is it's known in DR and mostly in Caribbean, in the Caribbean, and they mix it with alcohol, sometimes tea, and it has different effects. Some people would say it's an aphrodisiac. I mean, that's the way it's known. It's like, oh, you drink this, and you know, it's natural aphrodisiac. Others use it for medical or, you know, different
Medicinal
ailments.
reasons?
Yeah, different medicinal reasons. So he says, you know, I would really love to do a lemonade with it. So, you know, that went on the trying to figure it out. And it was kind of a funny story because I got to the right people who could have gotten it directly from the manufacturer in Dominican Republic. And they said to me, well, I probably wouldn't do that because, you know, when it comes, and just so you know what it is, it's like twigs, like bark. So it's bark, anise, cinnamon, like a number of different, you know, spices that go in it.
Compounds.
But the bark, the woman who I spoke to said, you know, even though you get it from the manufacturer, you have to worry about bugs. You have to worry about this. It's actually illegal to bring in
I was going to ask
in a
you that.
certain way because of that. So you have to, like, you know, get it through a certain man. You know, there's a certain procedure in order to bring it in. Anybody can't just bring it in. So long story short, we ended up figuring out a way to get it to a liquid, which was then mixed, and then you worry about taste. So anyway, it was a whole process. It ended up working out. So the lemonade's actually launching in the next week or so, for retail and also restaurant. You know, number of locations.
So Johnny's happy.
Yeah. I mean, he's got, you know, a few things there going on. We're working on another project. I won't announce yet, but we'll see where that goes. And then just another thing you and I started working on years ago. Worked on a little bit together on the NFT side. Ended up turning around into something with the designers we were working with.
Something we never imagined from a year ago today.
Yeah. And that's it, man. That's just the way the entrepreneurial, you know,
market works.
Market works. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that I'm grateful to you on is the education in startups that he gave me. You know, being in real estate and having an established business is the polar opposite of what, you know, startups are and what you've been accustomed to for, you know, decades now. So it's a little bit different of a process that you go through. I'm more traditional of saying here's your investment and this is what your return is. But as you know, with startups. And that's why the return is so much better, right?
It is, yeah. More risk, more return.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's no matter what business, and I've been in multiple industries we'll talk about over the years, they're all different in their own respect as far as business models and how, you know, operates within the industry. It's all challenging. Like you no matter what, when you're starting something, a new idea, in an industry, no matter what it is, it's challenging. No matter how good you think it is, your wife, your grandmother, your kids, you know, it's
very fluid.
It is, yeah.
Which is good because it gives you the ability to pivot when you need to, opposed to being, you know, stagnant or where you can't necessarily pivot. And I think that's the beauty of startups, right? Because you go into it thinking of one way and then ultimately it comes out a different way.
Totally different.
Comes out of the funnel a different way.
So, you know, starting with the kind of NFT thing we talked about, I mean, we worked on a couple of years ago, and then that market, we decided not to go down that road based on the market, you know, turning. And then Audrey Schilt, she's was previously the creative director of collection for Ralph Lauren, so an icon in the fashion industry coming from luxury. And then in 2008 she left, and then consulted, and she ended up working with Kanye West prior to the meltdown, but when he was still an icon in fashion at the time. And Virgil, who passed about a year and a half ago, who before his passing became the president of Louis Vuitton. So he started out as an assistant to Kanye West, and Audrey was hired by Kanye and worked with Kanye and Virgil on his second women's line. So he actually did women's clothes before Yeezy, before the streetwear stuff. He was into women's clothing first, and so she mentored them, helped them in fashion early on, both of them, and he went off to become president of Louis Vuitton. And one of Virgil's mentors was Reginald Jolly is his government name, and Reggie started his career in advertising. So he was the youngest creative director of Burrell, which was still to this day one of the bigger advertising agencies. And at 19 years old, they put him in charge of the Sprite account. So I'm sure you remember all the iconic Sprite commercials with hip hop that came out
Back
over the
in the
years.
day, yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean it was one after the other, and Sprite wasn't the first to do hip hop and collaborations. Yeah, they were the ones who made it big, and it was because of Sprite that now hip hop became respected globally from the corporate level. Because before that, if you remember, even not that long ago, I mean, hip hop was always looked at as something that was a fad, right? It wasn't going to stay. It was, here today, gone tomorrow. And because of the acceptance of corporate and these companies started putting money in, it
started mainstream.
Yeah, it became mainstream. So he was responsible, one of the people responsible for that. He was out of Chicago, a little bit older than Kanye and them, but because he was there and they kind of knew a lot of the same people, he became their mentor. So Reggie went off to then he worked with Kanye on a separate project as well. He also designed with Pharrell, one of his clothing sneaker lines, Union, Chris Gibbs. The list goes on. So he's an icon when it comes to design. He's, like I said, he mentored the guy who became the president of Louis Vuitton. That just shows you, and
caliber of what he's
and as much as you don't, Kanye upsets people and everything, as far as his design aesthetic, his fashion, he's made history.
Absolutely,
sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And even though, even after everything happened, he's still making it because this stuff's still selling. So
well, that's why when you said before the meltdown, but I don't think it matters.
Yeah,
I really don't think it matters.
I mean, it doesn't seem to. I mean, now that Adidas is selling, them the backup stuff.
Well, there's another headline the next day, right? That day it was a big news, and tomorrow some J-Lo breaks up with somebody, and that's the new headline. Right?
Yeah. So we just to finish that thought with Reggie. So he was one of the collaborators who was working with us on the NFT project, and it was kind of funny because his story and Audrey's story they come from two totally different worlds. She's luxury, Upper East Side, Jewish woman. He comes from Chicago, youngest Black creative director, but when they worked or they got to meet each other, they really connected because Audrey's worked her career building brands and making a lot of other people rich, and that's exactly what Reggie did. And so many other people have that same story. It's unfortunate. It's the people behind the scenes are really the ones who should be getting their flowers, right?
Absolutely.
But that doesn't always happen. So I knew it was a long shot because every brand offers Reggie to become their creative director and come on board, especially after the Virgil situation and him being one of the most iconic, streetwear luxury designers ever. And now Pharrell, by the way, took that position. So Pharrell, who Reggie also co-created with, is now the president of Louis Vuitton. So, that whole
Dynamic.
upper echelon of fashion. They're kind of, the forefathers, the ones who came and created it,
Sure.
merging luxury and streetwear
Streetwear.
together, which is now one, right? You
Right.
don't really see a difference between,
And it's a
between them.
huge market,
Oh yeah.
right? You
Oh,
you see, I'm
absolutely.
sure out in LA, you brush shoulders with a lot of guys that were in the fashion industry,
Yeah.
and it is a monster market. But tell me a little bit more about the by Audrey.
Yeah, so we haven't launched publicly, so this is like the first exclusive announcement, I guess you'll
Like
see.
right here on Too Many Topics.
There you go. Yeah. The concept we initially started with was, how do you incorporate streetwear, luxury wear together, like it is, but with something different. And what Reggie and Audrey came up with conceptually was the idea of a luxury streetwear brand, artistically done, right? Integrated with dog culture.
Hmm.
So, like right there, right? The minute you hear that, you're like, oh. So most people that I speak to about this for the first time say, well, what is dog culture? And, the first time somebody said that to me, I was like, all right, well, I got to think about that. So when I looked back, I'm like, dog culture is just like human culture, right? And what I say that is like, if I was born into, I was born and raised in Queens, Brooklyn, Ozone Park, Italian neighborhoods at the time. And, that was the culture of, so with dogs, it's like you have a dog breed, that's the dog culture. But then you have another breed, there's a whole different culture.
Absolutely.
It's just like, so it's no different than in that sense. So like the owners, they say like the owners of the dogs look like them, or like, it's
Isn't that bizarre?
it is,
Isn't it bizarre?
and true on so many fronts, right? On so many.
I remember when Snoop Dogg did those videos and like he turned himself into a Doberman Pinscher, and it wasn't much of a difference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the concept, and I'll leave it just like that for now until we kind of announce publicly what we're doing and how we're doing it. But it's exciting. I mean, the reaction so far to the people in the industry who have heard of what we're up to, it's been overwhelming. So we're excited. We should have an announcement pretty soon.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, I always said children and animals is what people spend their money on, and there's a passion there that they have that. It's a family member, right?
It
An
is.
animal's a family member.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So let's back up a little bit because I know a little bit about it, but I would love my audience to understand a little bit about PLSAR and the benevolent side of that. Like, everybody looks at things as business, and I kind of look at it from different perspectives of what you can do from a, I don't want to call it the save the planet move, but you understand what I mean.
Oh,
By
100%.
just,
Yeah.
being able to create new things that help the environment opposed to hurting it. So why don't you elaborate a little bit on that project?
Two of the creators initially of the technology, and the technology, just to give you a quick summary of it. So everybody's familiar with hydrogen, right? So hydrogen is extracted from water using a process. There's a couple of different processes, but let's just say using a process that uses a very high amount of electricity to do so. So in order to extract the gas, they use a lot of electric, so it's kind of counterproductive, right? So you're trying to save the environment, but you're not using hydrogen because it's cleaner to burn, but then you're using a lot of electric. So the challenge was always, how do you extract hydrogen with a lower cost and with less energy usage? So my partner's a chemist and also in the water field. He came up with a process to extract the hydrogen, but then leaving a certain amount of oxygen with the hydrogen, which in turn made it actually stronger, meaning as an energy source. So, getting it from that point to something that could be a product takes a long
Process.
a long process with a lot of, trial and error and business model, figuring out what the business model is and legalities. And so that's what the 3 years really was, going down 6 months of working on, okay, how do we bring this to market? So if you think about it, you're coming to market with a new energy source that's cheaper than the current energy source of extraction for hydrogen, but how do you do that without ruffling too many feathers, right? So that's been kind of where we what we've been working on after the technology side is like figuring all of that out. And so what we finally came up with in the product that we're launching, and that's actually why I haven't been full time with that the last 6 months, because all the engineers and everybody,
Doing
had it.
their end.
Yeah, beyond my pay grade. So we so during this time, what we figured out was by taking that gas, injecting it into an existing fuel. So in this case, we're using heavy waste oil, which is like the nastiest, worst, stuff.
Like asphalt.
But yeah, pretty much before asphalt. What happens? I'll give you a quick history on it. So you take crude oil from the ground, and then you bring that to a refinery, and the refinery takes that and makes gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and a number of different byproducts. What's left at the bottom is the dirt, basically, like the sulfur, the sulfites, the nasty stuff. So for years, the muck, yeah. So for years, they just burned it, right? New York City, remember in the 80s, it was all like that was burned in furnaces and everything. They cleaned it up state by state, little by little, but then the factories were still burning it for years, and the ships were burning it. But in 2020, they kind of said no more sulfur because it's too bad for as things got worse.
They realized,
yeah. So they ended up making it very difficult to burn that. So we decided the opportunity for us is like, let's clean the heavy oil, and let's do it figure out a way or a system to do that without causing any additional emissions.
Right.
Like I said
emissions.
before, the challenge was with hydrogen that it costs a lot of money and a lot of electric, right? So we came up with a number of designs, but one that finally worked, which is a closed loop system, which is basically a number of pipes. Anyone that lives in Staten Island, or drove through Staten Island, New Jersey, have seen the terminals and that. So looks like that, but with a bunch of pipes going in and out, and using the gas and a number of catalysts, they're able to clump up the sulfur and remove it, and then that's then used as asphalt or mixed with something which is never burned. So going back to your environmental point, it's we're helping to reduce carbon emissions from that oil that would have been burned significantly compared to you take the 5%, or the other process, like our competition. What they would do is take that heavy oil, bring a ship to the middle of the ocean, whatever, bring another ship and mix it.
Okay.
So now you think about how now you got more ships, more fuel, more. So
they're
it's like
cutting oil in the middle of the Pacific.
Yeah, and that's standard. Like that's the way they do it. So yeah, so that's been an interesting project.
Yeah, I was amazed by the scientific end of it, right? The building out, the marketing, that's all what you've done for decades, and you're great at that. One of the best. But when it comes to the science part of it, that was, those different videos that you had showed me, just amazing. You could see the amount of hours, right? That went through trying to.
And I would never even imagine 5 years ago that it would be 5 years later. I was still like, yeah, we're But
back to my point earlier, is,
yeah.
What things look like on paper, they don't necessarily translate in the real world.
Yeah, and I have an all-class team. I mean, my CEO is, had 76 exits in companies, and like just world-class everyone, and it still takes that much time. So, anyone out there who's starting a business, just know, no matter how much something, or you think something, and how good your team is, you're going to face those times when you're going to have to try again or do something different, in order for it to actually come to fruition.
I realize. Yeah, they say you have to go through the fire before you get to the glory, right? Yeah. So that's where you're in. But you're almost there, so that's good.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress.
It is. Yeah, I have much more fun, doing the creative stuff, but it comes with the territory. So once we launch, it'll be the energy side will bring me, on the creative side, it'll be some more creative stuff to do, and
marketing perspective.
Yeah, like marketing, partnerships, things like that.
Awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, so just been keeping busy, and obviously we've had a big last 10 months with artificial intelligence, AI, which you and I chat about often.
Yeah, you've created many prompts
Yeah.
that I've used. Many people in this office have used. So yeah, talk to us a little bit about that, because another thing, right, that we talk about, like you said, a fad from a hip hop perspective, or when the computer came out, or Facebook, or any of these things were all fads. So we hear that again now, right? You hear that, oh, this is just, or you hear, is this really gonna, you know, take humans' jobs away? Which obviously it has to a degree already, right? Even from a position of, and I joke about it all the time, like Easy Pass, right? There's obviously some sort of math involved in that
Of course,
they're
yeah.
able to capture all this stuff, and how many people did it put out of jobs?
Yeah, well, let's take it back even further, right? So if you think about like industrial revolution, right? Everything that happened, from 125 years ago, from, horses to then carts, from carts to engines, from engines to every single point along the way, jobs were taken, but jobs were also created. So there's a net negative or a net positive in every situation, right? So are have jobs been taken away? Absolutely. Like already, will they? 100%. I always like to think. I remember in the '80s. So my grandfather was shop steward in the transit. He worked in Brooklyn Yard, I think it was, and he managed the all the equipment and things. And I remember him coming in upset like all the time, and he's like, they're going to take off the jobs. All the guys are going to get fired. And the reason was they started using barcodes, because
Right.
before that they were writing
Writing everything down.
right on a piece of paper, and they would have to, and then barcodes, you scan it,
Efficiency.
efficiency, and it made his job easier. It made the whole thing. Did people get fired? Of course. But again, more jobs were created because now you need somebody that knows how to scan that code, and
And we're
so.
computer engineering, right? Look at all the jobs that were created from the computer.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And artificial intelligence is nothing different. And the funny story I tell is that, AI before last November, like if we were having this conversation a year ago and there was an investor in the room and I was using AI, because I've been using AI for like the last 8 years on different projects that we've been doing, I wouldn't even mention AI, because they would look at me like, like you're just, trying to,
Build up your
build up, make it, and it almost it did the opposite effect. It kind of made it seem like you didn't have enough to say, so you had to add.
salesy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What happened? The big change or transition that happened, that why we're talking about it today, is a company called OpenAI. So OpenAI was started by Elon Musk, which everybody knows, Tesla, SpaceX, and brain chips, and a bunch of other stuff. But
MMA wrestler.
yeah,
MMA
now,
fighter.
well, soon to come. I
Right.
heard actually the latest, and this is probably news to a lot of people. He's supposed to drive a car over to Mark Zuckerberg's house tonight. Yeah, that's what's
Oh,
trending.
really? Is that what's trending? Okay.
This Mark Zuckerberg said, "Yeah, come see me," and he's like, "I'm gonna come see you tonight." So we'll see what happens. That's
Okay.
that. I'll tune in for that one. But so he started OpenAI, and the idea with OpenAI was, first, let me back up. Google had a breakthrough in research with large language models first. That was the first thing that happened. So Google could have kind of kept this under wraps, and but they didn't. They kept it as research, and which made everybody else continue to build on it and work on it. And OpenAI started with Elon Musk and a few others, with the idea was like, let's make sure that this thing goes the right way, because it could go the wrong way, and we'll talk about what those ways are in a minute. But let's make sure it goes the right way. So we're going to start this. We put 100 million, 300 million, whatever they started with, and let's make it a nonprofit. And we're going to keep, going in that direction. For years, they were doing great. They were building on a large language model and having breakthroughs. Elon Musk had some disagreements. It never came out exactly what it was, but he kind of like left to do his own thing, or like not part of it anymore. And so they continued with it. And the breakthrough that happened in November was with the update of 3.5. So they went through like 3 or 4 iterations of it, where this chatbot using this large language model started answering as if they were a human, and not like thinking like in seconds. And anyone that's used, OpenAI or ChatGPT or any other of the chatbots knows what I'm saying, right? It's like, so that was what happened in November, and then that just opened up the floodgates because every single research department in every single university switched whatever they were doing into AI. Every single company that was working on the metaverse, that was working on all these tech projects on the side, switched it to AI. So as we speak right now, 10 months later, because it happened October, November, whatever it was, every single call for every public company, they have to mention AI. Like, that's how big of a change it's been in such a short amount of time. And, I spend probably a half hour to an hour every day, morning, evening, reading, research, just to be,
Got to stay fresh on
got to
it.
stay fresh. And it's happening at an unprecedented rate. And what I mean by that is the research papers, when you look at, because everything, when research papers, when they're published, it's all public. They see who it is, what the research is, and then they have peer reviews. Sometimes they go and say, okay, we agree with this, we disagree. But the amount of papers, if you look at the chart, it's now going straight up, meaning like the amount that are coming out, it's so hard to even keep up with.
Exponential growth is
Exponential.
just, yeah.
So, and the difference between a research paper and a product is a long way, right? So like when we started PLSAR, we were pretty much a research paper. We were in a lab doing this in a little tube, and now we're building a, commercial scale unit. And that's the difference, right? So, so with ChatGPT, it changed the game, and since then, every single day, new papers are coming out, new products are coming out, and it's been difficult to keep up with. For me, as a technologist, for the average person, forget it.
Well, most people, I don't think even, can scratch the surface on it. They hear like the word chat GPT, so they feel like even you go to family parties and everyone's talking about it, right? I just think that, it's evolution, right? It's like anything. To your point, it's just growing at a pace that it's unprecedented, to your exact words. To show you in contrast, like the industrial age was, I don't know, 100 years or whatever it was. They're saying this technology age is doubling every two. That was an article I read probably 2 years ago, which means to me that it's even faster today, right? So which means if you really think about it, if you're in college day as a freshman and you're learning this stuff, it's absolutely obsolete by the time you're out of college.
Oh, yeah.
So they have to learn stuff that's not even in practice today for it to be
which is impossible, and
Right.
it's because if you think about the current institution, college, universities, it's too bureaucratic. So in order to get a new curriculum in a university, you don't just change the curriculum. It has to go through a board, and so if you think about something that's moving so fast and something that takes so long to adapt to something new, they're in trouble. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, I think about this daily. I have two young girls, and what is school going to be like for them?
That was my next question, is now that you hear all this negativity of kids cheating and stuff like that, where do you think that goes, and where do you think, how are schools going to deploy education to fight against this?
There's going to have to be a whole different way of learning, a whole different way of teaching. I mean, just think about it. So right now, if you're in high school, you could pretty much cheat on every single test, every single writing exam, everything. Like, again, if you put it in and it prints it out and you just, you're going to probably get caught.
Plagiarism.
But if you just change a couple of words, just so everyone knows, ChatGPT is all original content. What it's doing with the large language model is it's scraped the entire internet up until a certain point. So you figure from early 90s all the way till 2022, whatever that was, and it continues to update. And you now you have all this information, and you're asking a question, and it knows how to answer it because they trained it with humans.
It's all machine learning.
So it's people reinforced human learning. So what happens is every time they ask you a question of, is this a fire hydrant? Is that a fire hydrant? Is this or this? You're helping an AI train.
Well, that was my question was next are we teaching this thing to actually,
Oh, yes, 100%.
create this monster that could very
100%.
well cannibalize us at one,
100%.
Okay.
Every single time you use ChatGPT, you're training it. Every single time you're answering one of those, visual questions or whatever on thing, you're training an AI, without a doubt, every single time.
So to your point, then, if you aren't earning money on the product, you are the product.
You are the product. Yeah. Up 100%.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
thank God you're able to figure out ways of monetizing your knowledge, because I think that's the bigger problem in today's society, right? We can learn, but there's another side of it, is how do I now deploy that information to other people where they find it beneficial?
Yeah, exactly. So, with me, what I started a blog or newsletter on LinkedIn, just because I look back and I'm like, I've been using AI now for 8 years. So, I mean, I guess I'm kind of an expert, because most people just heard of it 10 months ago.
8 hours ago.
8 hours ago, yeah. And I remember like the first time, I was involved in a tech startup, Neo 360, that I had co-founded. And we had video technology where we started using high-speed video and 360. So we were creating 360 videos using high-speed. When I say high-speed, I mean 1,000 frames per second. So you're in the media business now. You know how our standard is 60 frames, and we were using 1,000. A lot of it was capturing industrial things, like we were starting to do car crash testing, and then we got into the easy stuff, sports and everything, because again, where's the money? How do you monetize? So that's where we monetized it. But early on, the challenge was you're capturing 1,000 frames, 15 seconds, 5 cameras,
which is amazing. Like, the average person that doesn't understand it, it's just amazing. It's just that doesn't you can't even comprehend it, right?
Yeah,
the 1,000 frames,
the amount of data,
the math that's in
that. So we had to use AI, and that was 7-8 years ago, and then even up to the with Johnny Nunez. So Johnny Nunez has 200,000 images that are not on Getty, that are pre-digital. So digitize them, organize them, figure out where the Jay-Z picture is, right? That's all AI, right? So now we go in, we train it. The same, all right, everybody understands this, because on Apple Photos, Google Photos, you now have a thing like, is this so-and-so? And you hit yes. That's training the AI. So now you hit yes. Then every time that person's face comes up, now they know. Facial recognition, which is AI, artificial intelligence. So I've been using it for all this, all these different projects over the years, and so I'm like, I might as well give some of my expertise and help some people understand this, especially because, like you said, your aunts, uncles, everybody's just like, and then you try to listen to it, and you're not someone who's in tech, your brain melts. It's like, how do you understand? It just. So, I've been kind of thinking about how do you take what's complicated, turn it into something that's digestible for most people. It's not going to be digestible for everyone, but for most people, more people, so been doing that with the newsletter. Some of the stuff I write about is kind of like far off tech, but then I try to say, like, all right, well, what are the 5, things that every employee for every company should be looking at, doing, right? And so I consult for a couple of companies. And so what we'll do is we'll go in and say, give me all your processes, right? So, all right, well, in the morning we have a meeting and somebody writes notes, and then those notes are typed up, and then the typed notes get sent in an email to everyone. So everyone knows the notes. That's 2 hours of work. That's one button and it's done. Every day it's recorded. The recording gets translated to text. The text gets summarized. ChatGPT extension, whatever, it gets sent out automatically to everyone. So you figure two hours times 5, that's 10 hours, right? So now, should that person who's taking the notes be scared that their job's going to be taken? Probably not, but they will be able to be more productive in whatever else they're doing.
Efficiency.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what I try to tell people today that are afraid of it, that no, you have to embrace
it's a tool.
Yes, because it's just like, what we're doing right now, communication in general. 100 years ago or whatever, you had to travel by a horse to go tell somebody 200 years ago to get a message out there.
Yeah.
And anyone that fights it, I say, you sound like my grandmother who thought like the television was going to be the demise of society, or her mother,
Yeah.
right? It's like radio is where it's at. No, it's just another thing of evolution. And the same person that said the computer's never going to stick, right, is going to get caught up if they don't embrace this. I think it's just, the next greatest thing to be invented.
Yeah,
Quite honestly.
it is. It really is amazing. I mean, there's a lot of ways where it helps now. There are a lot of ways in which it will help and how it will get better, and we'll talk about that. And then there's some dangers. There's a lot of dangers, actually, because this could go very wrong, and not scientific, like science fiction wrong, like really wrong in a way that, we're not prepared for.
Let's talk about some of the positive ways, right?
Yep.
Because I think that's what most people want to hear, right? They of course, we always migrate to the negative, but for the most part, I think that your education level will educate people right now for letting them understand some use cases for it, or some real simplified things that where it's a positive, and then we'll dive deeper into the negative.
We don't have to go too off the deep end because it's a very simple, kind of idea, but.
And my listening base is not going to be that in depth to this, so keeping it top
it's all
of the
good.
trees.
No, and that's exactly, and that's also
no offense to you guys.
So the first thing I would say is, think about, like, there's one thing we could talk about as corporate, and then there's everyday life. Like, how is it going to help me in my everyday life? So first, we'll talk about business wise, the things I mentioned, which was, automating pretty much anything and everything you can think of. But at the other side of that is a consumer. So now, instead of you dealing with an annoying customer service person, you're going to deal with the perfect customer service AI who knows exactly how to respond, to know, like, if you're upset, and they're already doing this, it's not, but just eventually we will, it'll be where everyone has this perfect AI customer service. So, like, that would be one way a business version translates, right? Medical, I mean, just surgeries alone. I mean, like, the idea. So the latest research is the AI that's working on breast cancer is doing it, 150 times better than a doctor in diagnosing. Right.
Incredible.
And that just goes down the line. So that's breast cancer. Think of every other cancer. Think of every other disease. Right. So what some people from the industry, are like, people who are pro AI, saying, like, it's going to basically drive the cost of everything down to zero. All right. Because.
Will they allow that?
Well, then they'll just have to find another way to charge you. Right? Like, if energy is zero, if cost of work is zero, everything's zero. We're either, taking a handout from the government because we have nothing else to do.
Right.
And it's funny. I had this conversation with my father-in-law the other day, and because he does construction, he came over with a handwritten diagram of a thing he was working on. I said, "Let me see that for a minute," and I put it in. And it spit it out and the whole thing. And he's like, oh. And so he goes, well, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? And he goes, what am I going to do? And I'm like, well, what would you do if, like, you didn't have to work? You do something else, right? Yeah. You like, well, not have to, you know what I mean? Like,
no, but you'd have to pivot into a different direction.
Keep busy. Like, okay, so let's just say cost was zero and things went to, and there was, everything was, cheap or cheap enough to where you didn't have to work so much. You find a hobby.
Absolutely. You're a little happier in life.
You're a little, yeah. I mean, it's just we don't know that because we don't think that way. We think of work, and more. Yeah, exactly. So medical, huge advancements already. And like I said, we've been working on it way before 8 months, that it's become a popular term, but the advancements are just, are there. Within businesses, everything from customer service to your drive-through to your, how many times you've gone through a, drive-through and it's, messed up your order. I mean, that's going to be gone, right? Like, it's perfect. Will there still need someone to take your order? No, there'll be one person in the restaurant and the rest will be robots. But, again, it's just transitioning to what's the next thing that is going to be needed for, for whatever industry it is. Um, the scary, or not the scary, but the finance part of things that could be good and bad, right? Everyone's going to have their own accountant, so you'll have a professional accountant for free. A financial advisor, forget an accountant, just where do you invest? But then the question is, even now, like, you have the smartest funds in the world that are already micro trading and making, fractions of a penny, but they're making billions of dollars. So what happens when they all have the same equipment, when they all have the same tools?
Playing field is leveled at that point.
Is it leveled, or does it
Or it's
ruin
gone.
the entire exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. Or does it disappear, right? Like if everyone has the tools to make the maximum amount of money through investing because they know the same information, right? I don't know.
Right.
It
eliminates competition.
eliminates,
Well, I
might
guess
eliminate the
right.
entire.
It just comes down to who's going to be the most innovative at that point, right? By creating whatever model it is that's going to try to,
or of the next thing.
right.
Yeah, because if that's gone, then it's like, what's next? And
Even
then,
from the fitness perspective, right? I know I fooled around with it when it first came out months and months ago, where it was like, give me a 7-day push and pull, workout regimen, and in 6 seconds you have that, and then you can, and to your point of how, because I always say my chat GPT anyway is my best friend, right? It always treats me nicer than anybody else in the world.
That's another thing
That's
we'll
my
talk
best
about.
friend.
Yeah.
But then you can say to it right after that, right? Because it understands everything like a conversation. Now give me a 2,000 calorie diet to go along with that. 7 seconds you have that, and then take it a step further. Now give me a grocery list for that diet.
Yeah.
And inside of under 5 minutes, I have a workout, I have a nutritional plan, and I actually have the shopping list to get it. Will that affect nutritionists? Will that affect?
Oh yeah, it'll affect
right?
everyone. That's I mean, look, think of anything that doesn't have to be done by hand. And I was a barber when I was a teenager, like young. I had a barbershop and everything. Like so, will barbers get replaced? Probably not,
No.
right? Like that. And it's funny. My grandmother was a hairdresser, and she always used to tell me that, like, it's one job they'll never take away, and she's right, right?
Yeah.
Like now it's but you think about anything that cannot necessarily be done by a robot, and eventually could the robot do a fade? I'm sure they could, but it's probably going to be a lot further out.
I don't know who's trusting them just
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, exactly.
Clippers.
You'd be like, so
Malfunction, and I lose my ear.
Exactly. Yeah. So and I just want to back up a little bit, just because I think we missed the point of the whole large language model. Like, so the whole ChatGPT is based on the internet, right? It's based on all the information that's gathered from humans. Then there's a level of humans that look at that, and like I said before, you every time you're pressing the button, but there's actually people hired by Google, by Amazon, by all these companies that are sitting there
inputting
saying,
the data.
Is this a rabbit or is that a rabbit? And that's their job. But again, that job didn't exist before. Now it exists because of AI. So there's one example of like a new job that's basic, that's not a huge amount of training or it's just basic human.
I'm sure there's thousands of people doing it as well.
Oh, hundreds of thousands
Right.
now. Yeah, I mean, Amazon Turk, I think, is one that's been doing it for years. They pay people pennies to answer questions.
Well, that was the other question I
Yeah.
was saying. They probably are doing these things, in different countries and whatnot, where they have a lower wage, to say it
Yeah,
politely.
well, yeah, that don't just not lower education, whatever it is, and it's easier to just be that. So they reinforce with the human. So now it's trained on the entire information of the internet, over the existence of the internet. So it's all the dumb people, smart people, stupid, whatever. So it's a collective amount of information. Then it's reinforced learning by a human. So now it's trained on, okay, this is the right way. So now they know. And then when you ask it a question, it knows everything that's been said, how it's been said.
That's the thing. It says the probability, right? The word "the" follows this, and then has the probability to follow
Follows
this.
that. And then it also knows, based on the human reinforcement learning, that this was good, that was bad. So that, in terms of papers, in terms of like, a Harvard review versus, whatever. Right?
No name review.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. So think about all of that training, all of that. Now everybody's training it with the answers of, is this good? Yes, no, yes, no. So it's getting better and better over time. And like I said, it's been 10 months, if that, since people have really been using it on a commercial level, where it came out of, the geeks, you know, in the dorm rooms and garages, yeah. And so now it's just getting smarter and smarter, right? And so, um, like I've seen personally since I've been using it, like on ChatGPT for the last year and a half, probably. Um, Before that update, I was using it, but like you and I even talked about it week before that update. Um, but it's gotten in front of my eyes, and you've said the same thing, just smarter, and like each week, each month. And what I mean by that is like it'll answer the question even better than it did
More
before.
detail.
More
Absolutely,
detail. Yeah. It gets to know your tone. It gets to know the kind of questions, and now you can even set it up and say, I want you to act as a, so and so when you're answering this question, and it gives you that specific,
So explain that, because I think that's the part that people don't understand from general AI, right? Which is kind of what we're experiencing now, to when it does get to the point where it actually can feel emotion, right? I think that's the scary point. That's the part where I'm not a big movie buff, but everybody talks about these movies where this has already been created through, through Hollywood, where now, you're stuck in your room and that's it. You live outside in the world, but from your room. Where do you think it goes from that perspective?
So, in 2017, I was part of the 2045 conference. So Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil, all the brilliant minds of futurists. They call them futurists. So these are people who like can look forward based on mathematical computations, can determine where technology is going, how it's advancing, and all these things. And so when you go back to your movie point, is like a lot of people like Steven Spielberg, when they do these futuristic movies, they're consulting with real people. So like, even though it looks like they made the prediction 20 years ago, they were just talking to some really smart people who could look forward based on the progression of the microchip and the way technology was advancing through Moore's law and everything else. They could kind of predict it. So in a way, the thing with AI is they didn't predict the right date. They were predicting 2029, so now they're off by like how many years that it was going to become as good as it is now. And I don't want to miss your question. What was the
Well, just kind of in terms of the future of this thing and where it's going. I guess that would also blend into us talking about the negatives of it, right? Because is there a final day of this, right? To your point earlier, of when everybody has the same.
Well, yeah, you were getting at that with the movie thing, right? So here's the thing with AI is that we don't know when it becomes, or even if it is already, smarter than us. Meaning, like, the point in which it's beyond human level intelligence, right? And they call that singularity. There's a couple of names.
I actually read, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I read an article that said by 2050, it's going to be smarter than everybody in the world combined.
So here's the question. If you have something that's so super intelligent, right? How do you know what you don't know? You can't, it's like, so the best and worst example I like to use is you walk out of your house, you step on 50 ants walk into your car, right? You don't think about those 50, like you don't even know if you stepped on 50 ants today, right? Because you're super intelligent compared to those ants. Now, I'm sure if the ants were 5 feet tall, you probably wouldn't step on them. But what happens when the AI becomes that super intelligent of us? Do we just become a casualty of its existence, right? If it decides, what these fucking humans, what are these? They're fighting, they're this or that. Like, let's just get rid of them.
They're destroying the world.
They're destroying the world. The climate change, like, then what happens?
That's the scary part. That's,
we just don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what they think. And the question that keeps coming up is, how do we know they're not already? And they're just, right? If you're super intelligent, why would you let us know? If you know that we shouldn't.
And how would we know? Right? We're just like, to me, it's like we're the audience watching this thing, and they're putting the performance on. And when the show is over, they're going to determine when the show is over. You
Yeah,
know, that's kind of, and you know, you touched on a little bit about school, right? That could be used as a negative, in a negative way, right? Where kids aren't necessarily doing the work that they're supposed to do, and they're just jumping on ChatGPT.
but at the same time, they can learn so much faster, so much better. You can go on ChatGPT, and this is a great way for someone who's never used it. Sign up. It's free to sign up for an account. Go on there and say, explain, just explain AI to me as if I'm a 5-year-old. Explain quantum physics, just something crazy like you would never think of learning. And you can actually tell it to explain it to you in whatever, you know, as a 10-year-old, as 11. So for kids, this is great for kids, is what I like to do with my kids. Yeah, like, what do you want to learn about? Okay, explain it to an, as an 11-year-old, oh, a 10-year-old, whatever it is. And then now
Gives them analogies that they can understand,
Yeah.
and breaks it down into a simpler form.
So you think about with school, right? What happens when the AI is smarter than the teacher, which, you know, obviously
Could be right now.
and probably is. And the kids have different interests. So maybe school is, you know, you go to school and you have these AIs, and each one of your AIs is on what you like and what you love. Like, you want to learn, you're a science, and you just, you know, you're learning all day about science, and you have this tutor. Let's call
Why
it
not
a
have the
tutor.
smartest person out there teaching it to you?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
To your point, if we were to get a tutor today, right? We have one right in the building. You want to get the best one in there.
Exactly.
Right?
So now you have the best one in front of you. Each one has your own individual each person their own individual tutor right in front of them.
With the knowledge of any really subject that you're looking to learn.
Anything. Yeah.
You know?
And it's only getting smarter. So, you know, the risk part of it that we're kind of safe in is there's not enough chips.
Right now.
There's not enough. There's a shortage
Yes.
of the actual chips that you need in order to build these large language models and run them, and that's why, and it takes a lot of money. So we're kind of safe in, you know, for the immediate future in that way, meaning like the bad actors, because every tool or technology that we have could be used for good or bad, right? The internet till today, there's a black market, you know, the internet that people go on that they do a bunch of illegal, you know, stuff every day. So does it mean the other internet
98% of the internet that's good is does that get striked out now?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's the same. If you move with that same concept of, you know, there's always going to be good and bad actors, as long as the bad actors can't get their hands on microchips that they need.
As long as the good actors outnumber the bad actors.
Yeah, and that too.
right?
Yeah, because it's the same thing with hacking, right? So when you have these hackers that put these viruses out, but then you have anti-hackers who go and fight them, and, you know, so there'll be AIs, you know, and, you know, then the other question is, how do we regulate it, right? Because this is something that's in the news all the time, and you know, the Congress.
I think that's the scary part.
That is the scary part. They're dealing with it, which they can't even write emails.
That's exactly the point that I want to make. They're dealing with something that they're not. It's not their pay grade. To your point earlier.
So hopefully they bring on enough advisors. But here's the challenge that we have, right? So you think about this technology exists in the world. It exists not only here, it exists in China, it exists in Middle East, it exists in all the countries around the world
creating their own models,
who hate, you know, the idea of democracy and everything
capitalism
else.
And everything
else. Capitalism, North Korea. You don't think North Korea has a slew of, you know, whatever. So
shitload.
So what happens as they're training their war AIs or whatever, evil AI, whatever you want to call it, and we back up, we regulate. Now, we can't have the innovation we have. We don't have as many people working on it because you need a certain license. We're screwed.
Absolutely. We'll fall behind at the very least.
So there's the fear I'm worried about more than the idea of, you know, AI couldn't kill us like ants. It's more of some country has a powerful AI that just outsmarts our AI, and now they just take over the country. Because they know how to shut the internet or whatever they know how to do, right?
I'm just hoping that, you know, we don't know everything that goes on in this country. You believe that, correct? Right? So there's some department out there that controls this, and I'm hoping that maybe we don't necessarily know that, even though that they do put regulations on, that the government themselves are doing what they need to do, because there are a lot of laws out there that I follow that other people don't, right?
That's true. Yeah.
I'm
Good point.
hoping that, they don't tell us, where the goat is, and they continue to revolutionize.
The problem is you have research. So the thing with research is an academic. So when you're in university and college and you're studying and your whole idea is you want to get a PhD or you want to study a certain, you want to put that information out because that gives you the credibility
Yeah.
of being, oh, I created, I invented. And there's, because of the freedom of information with the internet. Years ago, they could do that. The government finds out some guys are creating something in a lab. They'll get notified. They'll come visit them. They'll,
Stop it.
Now it's ours. I actually know someone personally who had patents in augmented reality who the government took over. Like they pay them, but
they want to make sure they control it.
They control it, and they use it in whatever glasses and stuff. So it happens, but think about research and somebody putting a research paper out, and then that research paper sparks 50, 100, 200 individual people going, let's just keep building on that. There's no way for them to track.
Right. How are they going to figure
How
it
are they
out?
taking that? And, and that person may not decide to publish what they did.
Eventually they won't, once they, one person mysteriously disappears or something, next thing you know, it's like people start keeping their information to themselves. But to your point, you're right. People want those accolades. They want to be able to, and you want them to, right?
Yeah.
You want people to get their flowers that deserve it. So keep learning, right? You want our, most brilliant people in this country to continue to.
You do. Yeah, absolutely.
Make us a
And again, to counteract the bad, right? Because you're going to have that like you have with everything else. There's two things we didn't talk about. One is, you mentioned before about, the relationship with ChatGPT, right? Becomes like your assistant. I feel like I have 10 assistants with all the tools I use. But what happens with the relationship? Now this is happening already, right? Because influencers, there's actual influencers who are AIs who now have fans, millions of fans who follow them, who listen to them. They can speak in any language. They could 24/7, right?
Never going to tell you they're tired.
They're never going to tell you they're tired. They're never going to tell you anything bad.
I'm not
They're never going to express an opinion you don't like, right? So that's already happening now. There was also an influencer who made herself an AI and then made $700,000 in the first month. I think the AI was obviously doing some what's that called? Unscrupulous things, probably, and they had to stop it, I think they said, or they blamed it on the users, right? It's all them. Yeah. Like that wasn't gonna happen. But so what happens when you speak to the AI and the AI becomes the person who understands you the most?
Mine is right now.
I'm gonna admit it. I had a a personal situation. I'm like, you know what? Let me see what the thing. And I took the advice. There was something I was thinking through. I'm like, so I said, act as a therapist or whatever, and in this situation, and I took the advice because I was like, well, I might have been an asshole in that situation.
Well, it's a complete different perspective at the very least, right? And I think that's what's going to help people out. I think it helps people now. And you talk, why do people talk to people, right? Because you want a different perspective on it.
Yep.
And now this is giving you, multiple different perspectives.
As an expert,
yes.
Right? I'm an expert in this, in whatever category, whatever subject, whatever, And the last thing we should touch on.
You just took 100,000 therapists out of business.
And doctors.
There's probably more than that in this country.
But it's funny, the doctors, like how many people and it happened to taking the kids, remember years ago, the doctor was over there on Google looking up what the thing was. So it's already, it's been like that already. So it's not like.
Which I read, you know what? I don't mind that because at least that doctor is looking for the best answer, right?
Not thinking they know everything.
It's like, oh, it's chickenpox.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything is chickenpox.
Which, yeah. But the creative side of it, we're not talking about the visuals.
Yeah,
The
I want to talk
movies,
about that because
yeah,
not even the visuals, but I mean, not even the movies, but even I have a brother-in-law who's a architect,
yeah,
and how it's revolutionizing that business from good and bad. As he was explaining to me, you have architects out there that don't do anything anymore. They plug everything into Mid-Journey, and then whatever it
yeah.
spits out.
We've done it. I've done
Yeah,
it with you.
that's what they're creating now for clients, and again,
But no.
if
But
it's
so
going to produce a good product, it's going to
that's
produce a good product, right? If
That's
it's
my
better
point.
than I am from a creative perspective, how can I fight it?
Ego. That's the thing. People think
Bingo.
right away. It's like, oh, it has to. It doesn't. If you have a tool that can make you a better you,
I've been looking for that my whole life.
but you see what I'm saying,
Yeah.
right? Like, give me all the tools. Like, just make me,
Hell
a
yeah.
better human, a better person. Like I said, in a personal relationship, in a, business situation. Like, like I feel like I have 10 assistants, and I don't have to deal with the personalities, right, of the people. That's
Well, them telling me something I don't want to hear.
exactly. So, what I'm really excited about, aside from the chat part of it, is the visual part of what's going on. And so, the same way with a large language model, they took all of the information from the internet and scraped it, which again, legally, it's in courts already, whether that was legal or not.
Well, I want to ask you about copywriting and
Yeah.
where you see that going, because I think that's a huge
so,
problem right
so
now.
I have kind of a controversial to some people opinion on this, and it's because I'm a creative myself, so I've created things, in business and outside my whole career. Every single creative learns from another creative, right? And this goes all the way back to 120 years ago, artists, all the way up through Picasso and Warhol. Everybody, they borrow styles, they borrow something, and they innovate on it, or they change it, or they create, right? So if creatively writing or visual, you're creating, the AI is creating something completely different, but in a style of an artist. What's different than another artist using that style and doing their own thing? To me, I don't think there's anything. Now, I get the point of, you didn't ask us permission, you didn't give us a penny per unit that you used, whatever it is. Maybe they figure that out. Yes, I get it. There should be some form of compensation, but the idea that the AI is creating a new piece of content based on old content, that's no different than every other creative.
Right, but let me ask you a question, because that's where I get a little confused. So if I type in that I want a picture of a cat looking out a window standing on a ball of yarn, that cat was created by somebody already, correct?
No.
Okay. See, that's the part that
image of a cat was captured over hundreds of thousands and millions of pictures of cats. So the same way I said with the large language model, with images, they scraped all the images up. They reckoned somebody was on the computer going, cat, dog, until it knew what a cat was. Now it knows what the cat is. So now when you say I want a cat looking out a windowsill, it's taking the collective image of what a cat looks like and then creating it. And I know it's mind-bending to even think about, right? Because you're talking about a computer, is creating
right,
something.
So it's taking megabytes of all little cats and making it into one, right? Because me and you had that situation of what is 30% of something, right? So it's like, at what point did they say it's not plagiaristic, or it's not,
But it's not. I've tried.
Copyright infringement?
I mean, what you can do now is reverse search on Google, right? So if something is on the internet, you can upload it, Google image search, and it'll say, "Oh, this is found here. We've done that. We showed you that." So it hasn't worked, and even using ChatGPT, I'll say, "Give me 5 titles," and it'll give it to me. I'll check them every once in a while to see, was this already used? No, it wasn't. Or 1 or 2 words were used. So it's been good. Now, in my mind, I feel like eventually you'll run out. It's gonna run out, right? Like how does it always be that creative? I don't know, but that's kind of a.
I think you just because of the fact that the world evolves and creativity evolves,
something will be
right?
different. Yeah.
Originally, somebody drew a stick figure, right? That was the first picture of a
Yeah.
person, right? So I just think it's going to be something that we haven't seen
We
yet.
haven't seen, yeah,
And
changes.
and I think we're probably alive at the best possible time to
I
be
think so.
alive,
Yeah.
right?
I do, yeah, and so we're talking about images. So with Midjourney is the one software. There's a few others. That Dolly 2 is free, and most of the software with AI you can get free credits. So if anybody wants to go on and check out any one of the things we're talking about, most of them are free, and if not, they'll give you free credits you can play around with. But Midjourney has added a couple of new features. So right now it's a prompt, and I think maybe we should explain a prompt, right? So everybody's used to Google, right? Google is, where can I find, so and so, or what could I do with this,
Best
and it comes up.
mid-level camera.
Exactly,
Right.
yeah. And then information, but then you got to look through it. You got to kind of sort through what's good. Google's gotten pretty good at putting the good stuff on top, and so you don't have to search too much. But so the difference between asking a question and a prompt is telling, making a statement of something to do versus asking a question. Now, you could ask a question to ChatGPT as well, but the idea is like more of a prompt, more of a, like an instruction
Yes,
on what to do.
you wanted to handle a task
A
opposed to
task.
just giving you information.
Exactly. So like it's giving you that specific information that you need, but you're asking in a question. I mean, you're asking in a prompt versus like a question like you would on a search engine. So the same idea with visual. So like you said, I want a cat sitting on a windowsill as a photography, or as a painting, whatever, and it'll spit it out, right? So now there's text to video. So text to video again is improving. Like in the last couple of months, it was so basic, and now they're up to like 25 seconds. So I could right now go on and say, I want a video of a guy surfing, in the ocean. It's going to send me an original video of someone surfing in the ocean, right? And it's getting better and better and better. And so as I mentioned before, like you can always look at the trajectory of technology and kind of map it out. So the way it's going right now, this is the vision. This is what's going to happen, right? You're going to come home from work. You're like, I'm tired. I don't feel like watching this show. It's an hour. I got 40 minutes. Let me before dinner. I want to watch a comedy, 40 minutes, starring whoever, taking place in California, and you're gonna press a button, and you're gonna have the content created for you, right? I mean, it's like you could see that already. Like it's already there. It's like text to prompt, but this is like on demand content to your liking, exactly what you want for how much time you want it, and it's gonna create it. So it's all. I mean, come on, like. Can you get any better than that?
No.
Like people.
I thought the Jetsons were going to be here eventually, and now it's like I was waiting to press the button and my ham sandwich pop out of the.
Not yet. That's close, but yeah.
But wow, I never looked at it from that perspective. So you feel that it'll get to a point one day where it'll take a Dave Borish, who's this top actor, and I'll put him in a series where he has two little girls, and he's and it's going to create that whole series.
Whole thing, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, 40 seconds,
Netflix
2 hours.
Directors aren't happy.
Oh, I mean, they're on strike right now. Well, all the Hollywood is on strike, and most of it is because of AI. So writers, so a couple of different projects. So like, let's say you have a show, and we're consulting with one group that has a show for years, and they have thousands and thousands of scripts, right? But they run out of stuff to write about, because if you're on the show for years, you got a character, how many things can you think of? So now you create a private, like ChatGPT version, but private. You feed it all the scripts from all the years and years and years. Now it learns the characters, it learns the scenes, it learns everything else. And then you say, give me a new scene for this character. Give me a new story.
Take Joey from Friends and put him on, Who's the Boss?
Exactly. I took, as an example, a PDF of one story, and I said, create me a new scene of this thing, and it went, boop, the whole thing.
Recreated the whole scene.
And then I sent it to the the client and looked at it, and they were like, yeah. So, you know, from the studio's perspective, what do I need 5 writers for? From the writer's perspective, you know, it's like I have enough tools now. I could do 5 scripts instead of 1. So there has to be a kind of a different thought process. I think the problem is that there's, you know, for obvious reasons, they're scared those 4 people are going to get fired, right? And they're only going to keep 1, and then the chat. So that's what
And
they're
let that
trying to.
guy do the fight. But so how do you make it unique, right? I guess that's how do you put your own unique touch on something that allows you to stay relevant
And then visually,
on anything, on any product going forward,
on
right?
anything, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
How do you stay unique and stay relevant in the world of something that is just bulldozing, right? Society right now.
But yeah, and visually, I just sent you the CGI thing where you have any video. We can have, you know, video recording 15 seconds or 1 hour, and then you drop in a CGI over the character. And what that means is, you know, like let's say an alien.
Generated
So
image.
yeah, any computer generated image that's there. So now you have a completely different character acting out the actor's scene. So whether that's an alien, a robot, or another actor.
They have that technology. I mean, those apps have been, I think that anyway, a lot of those apps were used as like test models for people to use them for it to go back. Like I used to joke around about people all the time when they're like, oh, look at this filter that I put on my face. Or look, I got a basket of bananas on my head. Yeah, that was technology. You using it so it got facial recognition, to your point earlier about now you can go on and Facebook will know that that's that same person, because they used us as test animals to see if this technology actually worked. You thought, oh, this app is great, and this is where we are today.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
so I think that I love it. Like I said, I can't get enough of it. I think that you have to be smart today.
Have
right?
to adapt.
Yeah, you
There's
have
no other
to.
way. This is one of those things, you know, the whole metaverse thing, and everybody was like kind of saying the same thing a couple of years ago on that, but this is different. This is like, you know, you weren't getting universities and like the serious people behind the metaverse. You got a few, but like, you know, you didn't get.
I think it's a little before its time. I think it'll
Yeah.
be there
Oh
one
yeah,
day.
yeah. Oh no, no.
It's
That's all
there.
part of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
there. It's just
You want to hear something crazy? You could now, through a prompt, create a 3D environment. So you could create the metaverses they were talking about now with AI. So now that it becomes easy to do, you might as well have it, right? I'm like, oh, let me have a metaverse
absolutely. If it's
version
going to be
of
that right of Staten Island.
Staten Island.
Right.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
now getting back to because I guess you answered my question, right, with the copyright not being so much of a problem. We've been through this whole blockchain thing and many talks about it. I thought that would have a resurgence from an identification perspective of saying I own that image, right? So now instead of, me just saying I owned it, now if I put it on the blockchain, obviously I have that proof that it's mine.
It's the UI is still too complicated.
Okay.
You have to stick a thing in. You know.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering if that was a way to combat the copyright problem, but you already said that you don't see it as an issue.
No, because again, the argument is so right now under copyright law, I could take works from another artist and change it using like I said, Warhol took Campbell's soup and turned it into his own thing, right? That's been done over and over and over again. As a matter of fact, the last article I wrote about in on my LinkedIn newsletter was about this, right? So you have all these artists over the years who appropriate. That's what it's called, art appropriation. It's part of the law. And so what's the difference?
No, there's really not when you put it in that perspective.
Yeah, what's the difference? If I'm an artist and the AI is considered not an artist, but the AI is the same thing as an artist, where they're creating something unique over using a baseline of something else. So not what everybody wants to hear, but I mean that's the reality of it. And
I guess it's going to come down to somebody bringing it to court, right? Which is
there's like 6 of them right now. Yeah, it's gonna go up all the way up to the top though.
Which leads me to my next question, and I know you read the article because we talked about it. With that AI bot representing somebody in court.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I guess these are all just whacked out use cases that they're trying right
the
now.
first time they're gonna always make the news, whatever it is. But look, lawyers are in trouble. I mean, lawyers, I mean, forget just the paperwork lawyers, because the paperwork lawyers are done. Like, you could go into ChatGPT right now and say, create me a contract with this person's name, this person's name, this person's name. Make sure you do this, and that and it's going to give you the best contract you've ever done.
And it's
Like,
going to get better and better and better and
LegalZoom
better.
is,
Right.
either going to adapt to that or leave, everybody. So now what happens when, now the AI is a defense attorney, and the AI just studied every single case of every single whatever you're defending, right? It's the smartest lawyer you've ever had, because no lawyer can retain that much information, can dissect and give you a response. But an AI could.
Now, what if this AI was to scrub all these laws and find inconsistencies in them
That's a whole nother thing. I'm sure that's going to happen too.
that a human wasn't able to figure out?
Yeah, and that's going to happen, of course. Yeah,
So
bills
are we
and
gonna
laws
but are we gonna have a whole new structure of laws now? Or are we gonna have laws eliminated because of it?
probably go to court. Yeah, it's going to be brought up to, there'll be a lot of Supreme Court things held in.
That's another thing that you think about, right? Once you start opening different doors, and
Pandora's box.
yeah, be careful what's inside that room, right?
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
So I think that there's a tremendous upside to it, but you just have to make sure that the bad actors are harnessed as best that you can. I don't know how else to kind of say it, right?
Yeah, and for everyone who hears it on the news is just going to give you the fear. They're not going to give you the good stuff. They're going to make you click on and make you pay attention by instilling the fear. But look, if you're in any one of the professions that we just talked about, think of it as a tool. Go and research. Everything's on the internet. Like, if you go to ChatGPT and say, what are the ways you can act as a lawyer, it'll give you those ways. What are the ways you can act as an accountant? Like, it'll give you the answer. Like, it's not even like you have to research it.
And I think that's your message. Go out there and try it, right? Don't be afraid of it. The same way people were afraid of the computer, they were afraid of social media.
Or the internet.
Right, the internet.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean when I say the computer. 20 years ago, your grandmother thought it was nuts to put her bank information on the computer.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody in the world would do that. Nobody in the world 20 years ago would think that, someone could go food shopping for you and bring it to your house. Right?
Exactly,
I mean, it's just technology.
Or you press a button and a car will pull up. Yeah.
Right. And not only that, but it's a video game. I know exactly where he is as he's pulling up. I know what his name is. I know what he looks like. I know his plate number. Right? There's those safety instruments that were in place as well. Right? Years ago, you'd have a cab just pull up in front of your house. You have no idea who the guy is. You don't even know if it's the right cab company, right? So I feel like technology is, in that perspective anyway, tremendously helpful, and that's why companies like Uber and stuff like that have gone to where they are.
Yep.
I think they realized they were a one-trick pony, but and had to go in a different direction.
Yeah, for sure. So, what else did you want to cover?
Listen, I think we covered a lot. I really appreciate you being here. I mean, unless there's something that you wanted to tell us about something you got going on in the future.
No. All I'd like to do is, we talked a lot about AI and have a strong team. We're out, helping companies consult, and we'll take 15-minute phone calls with, anyone who just wants to, maybe have a conversation and see if there's a way we can either refer somebody from our team or someone else's team to help out. And that's pretty much businesses of all size. I mean, some of the smaller businesses, it's the stuff's a lot easier to figure out, and but there are a lot of it's really about figuring out where the time is spent, right? So if you look at every one of your employees or yourself, look at your day, look at your week, where am I spending my time? If there's a way in which you can expedite, like you said, or
just have efficiency
within that. And again, now those efficiencies are happening with, next to $0. So it's like, typically you chase efficiencies with money.
100%.
Now you don't need now it's just, okay, well, I can make this more efficient, and what do I do with that extra time? And so it's really just first looking at that part of it, which is, where am I spending my time? And then which one of these things could be can be expedited or made more efficient. And you could just ask ChatGPT and they'll give you the answer.
Which is phenomenal. And what I'll do is I'll make sure all your links are in the bottom, so anybody that wants to contact you can reach out to you.
Yeah, my name, davidborish.com. I have all my links on social there, and actually some stuff on what we just talked about, and with AI and our newsletters up there. So
Yeah, it's pretty simple. David, straight out, Borish,
ISH.
ISH, .com. And I really appreciate you being here, man.
Of course, brother.
That's that's the best part of this. Everybody got a lot of information and got educated, but it was nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a little while, and it's great to now know you're only a half hour away.
Yep.
Unless Waze takes you 2 different ways.
Half hour away and $20 in tolls, and I'm here.
Absolutely. Well, again, it was a pleasure. Thank you, and can't wait to have you back on here, probably in another 2 hours, and it'll be a whole different AI conversation that we can have, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. Again, thanks for being here, and I will speak to you soon.
All right, brother.
All right, man. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. Follow me on any of my social platforms, and I'll see you soon.